Live from the backstretch at historic Saratoga Racecourse, this is Saturdays at the Spa with Brian Nadeau. Saturdays at the Spa is brought to you by CapitalOTBBet.com, New York's premier wagering site. CapitalOTBBet.com. Sign up today. The new Capital mobile app. Wager anywhere, anytime. Download it free from the iTunes Store or Google Play. And the Nell's Restaurant, a Saratoga tradition since 1922. 284 Jefferson Street, just minutes from the track.
Good morning and welcome to Saturdays at the Spa. Brian Nadeau with you. It's Travers Day here at Saratoga Racecourse, and as my partner that just left, Anthony Mormino, and I just got through the handicappers report, it is a tremendous day out. If you're thinking about coming up, make sure you do. We've struggled with weather all meet. We've struggled with turf racing. We've struggled with rain. That will not be the case today. We've got a 13 race card. We've got 6 grade ones, 4 win-in you're in challenge races for the Breeders' Cup, 7 graded stakes overall, and of course it's highlighted a little later today around 5:45 in the PM by the Grade 1 Travers for 3-year-olds. A field now of 11 because as Dave Grenning tweeted out this morning, we lose Meistermind. Steve Asmussen's going to scratch his second starter. Meistermind was, 30, 50 to 1 in there, so it's not a big deal, but take note. He is out, and again, as Anthony and I alluded to earlier on the handicappers report, we have no Justify, and certainly that's very unfortunate that we lose our Triple Crown winner, but what we do have is basically everybody else that is standing in the 3-year-old division. Good Magic, Chad Brown, the local, the hometown favorite, and I'm going to have him on very shortly, a taped piece we did yesterday. Chad's got the 2 bullets in here with Good Magic favored on the morning line, and then Gronkowski making his second start in the United States, second in the Belmont Stakes behind Justify in his U.S. debut. Chad, as I mentioned, he's run horses in the Travers in the past. There's no doubt about it that these are his 2 best chances to win the race. He covets the most as a guy that grew up, in Mechanicville, probably about a mile from where I grew up, and as a local guy, and I'm certainly not a horse trainer, but I know the history of the Travers and what it means to people around these parts. And Anthony and I talked about it. It's an event. It really is, in not only in the Capital District, but around this general area. And so Chad's got a huge 1-2 punch and a huge chance to win it with Good Magic and Gronkowski. But obviously there's other shooters in here. And Mark Casse, who we're going to have in a little bit. I talked to him yesterday, and thanks to Chad and Mark for giving us the time too. I know it's a busy day. Mike McCarthy's going to join me very shortly at around 9:15, and I really appreciate him stopping by as well, and Tom Albatrani in a little bit. I understand at 9 o'clock on the morning of the Travers, it's tough to make the time to come over here and sit next to me, and I really appreciate all those guys that have done that for me, because it's a busy time. We're training horses. I really appreciate it. Mark's got Wonder Gadot. She's going to try to make history. Gary Barber owned, and she's going to try to become the first filly in over 100 years to win the Travers, and she's legitimately on my fair odds, she's 8 to 1, and when you're 8 to 1 in a race like that, you have a really big chance. Off 2 wins up north in Canada over males. They skipped the final leg of the Canadian Triple Crown, and they're going to try to make history. And take note that there's only one horse that has ever, one filly that's only ever won the Canadian Triple Crown. So they're trying. The coach Wayne Lucas has got a throwback Bravazzo in here, one of his old war horses that just dances every dance, and just maybe Bravazzo's better than ever in here. So Todd Pletcher's got Vino Rosso. Steve Asmussen's got Tenfold, the local winner of the Jim Dandy. Little foreign intrigue with Mendelssohn back to battle off, freakish UAE Derby win. He ships in for Aidan O'Brien. There's a lot of intrigue in the Travers, and there's a lot of intrigue on the undercard too. And like I mentioned, we're going to talk to Mike McCarthy very shortly. And for my money, he's got the best 1-turn horse in the country. He might have one of the best 2-turn horses in the country too, in City of Light, who's if you're not familiar with him, being that he's based on the West Coast. City of Light is a real freak of a race horse, and he looks like he's doing better than ever off some some crazy good California work. So it's pretty exciting that he ships in for the Forego, which is a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. I know it's a 7 furlong sprint, but it's a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. We've got the best older horses, turf horses in the country, and the Sword Dancer, a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Turf. The gang's all here in the Ballerina as they vie for a spot in the filly and mare sprint in the Breeders' Cup. A really good group there. 3-year-olds sprinting 7 furlongs, Grade 1 King's Bishop. Arguably, with the retirement of Unique Bella, two of the best older filly and mare dirt horses, and Abel Tasman in Elate, and they'll clash in the Personal Ensign with a bid for the Breeders' Cup Distaff on the line. The gang is all here at Saratoga today. There's no doubt about it. Anthony and I talked that, maybe some of these races aren't the best renewals ever, but if you're in training in our parts of the country, everyone is here today. As I mentioned, 6 Grade 1s. Naira's done a great job in the past of making these showcase days must-see TV. There's no doubt it's any different today. And as I mentioned, it's all highlighted by the Grade 1 Travers for the 3-year-olds at about 5:45. And when you talk Travers, you have to talk Chad Brown, who's got the two favorites on the morning line in Good Magic, the reigning 2-year-old champion, Breeders' Cup juvenile winner, and then Gronkowski, still a little bit of a wild card, I think, as he was second in the Belmont and his lone U.S. start. So as I mentioned, I got Chad yesterday. I really appreciate him taking the time. I got to see firsthand the rock star kind of mentality of what goes on over at the Chad Brown barn. He was happy and fortunate enough. We were fortunate that he gave us about 5 or 6 minutes yesterday. We're going to talk to him now about Good Magic and Gronkowski.
Good Magic moving in now effortlessly, and Good Magic comes to collar him around the far turn. Lone Sailor on the inside of Bravazzo, then Golden Brown. Core Beliefs is behind them. Navy Commander far back as Good Magic takes control with 1/4 mile to go. He opens up a 3-length lead on Bravazzo. Core Beliefs hugs the rail and is running a good one on the inside of Lone Sailor. There's 1/8 mile to go, and Good Magic's clear by 4. Bravazzo and on is second, but the champ is back. Good Magic in a good-looking performance.
Brian Nadeau, happy to be joined by Chad Brown. Chad, you bring the 2 favorites into the Travers, but they come in on different paths. Are you happy with the way both Good Magic and Gronkowski will enter the Travers?
Horses are training really well. Couldn't be happy with both horses.
Good Magic coming in from the Haskell. It's proven to be kind of a difficult hurdle. Any worries about the Haskell to the Travers?
No, I thought he won the Haskell comfortably. It seemed like he had some energy left in the tank there to finish, and he's surely trained that way. He's come back and breezed super 2 times in a row here over the main track at Saratoga, and I think he's coming in the race as good as he can.
1 1/4. Is it a question mark? I mean, obviously he hasn't done it, but he certainly was a good second in the Derby.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't won at the distance, but I think his Derby race would win this race tomorrow. So that's what we're looking for. Right. If he gives us the same effort that he did in the Derby.
Gronkowski, a huge Belmont. For my money, I thought he ran a winning race that day. Are you still getting to know him? It was the Belmont, 1.5 miles. He didn't break. It was kind of an odd race, but he ran huge. Are you still getting to know him? Do you feel like you have a really good handle on him now?
Yeah, I feel like we have a really good handle on him now. This horse is training stronger and sharper than he was going on the Belmont. We liked our chances in the Belmont based on just a couple works. We didn't have him that long. Right. But now that we've had him longer, we feel much better about this horse, that we understand him, and I feel he'll break better this time from the gate as well. That
was my next question. In the perfect world, what kind of trip do you envision with him? Because, like you said, he didn't break in the Belmont. He was so far back. He breaks on Saturday. Where do you think he will be?
He'll still be towards the rear of the field, but not so far back this time would be what I'd guess, what I'd hope for. And then from there, I think it's important for this horse not to be stopped at any point of the race. I want to continually move forward.
Justify comes roaring home to a raucous Belmont Park with 1 furlong to run. Gronkowski and Hofberg trying to run him down. Vito Rosso is 4th, a 16th to go. Justify is still there. Justify from Gronkowski. He's just perfect, and now he's just immortal. Justify is the 13th Triple Crown winner. Gronkowski was second, Hofberg was third, and Vito Rosso was fourth.
Good Magic, at least on paper, looks like he's going to trip out really nicely in a race where I didn't think there was a lot of speed on paper. You envision maybe laying second, third, and fourth early?
I would agree with you. I don't think there's a ton of speed in the race. He's posted real well outside where Jose can hopefully just pick the spot where he wants to be.
Right. You've been in this race the last few years. I know as a local guy it would mean a lot to you. Is it safe to say that this is the best chance you've had? I know you brought a Preakness winner here, but these are two pretty heavy hands here.
It's definitely the best chance we've had by far to have the top two choices in the race. It's just really a dream come true, and to win this race would be an amazing feeling.
Yeah, I was going to say, as a Mechanicville native, you grew up right down the road. Do you allow yourself to think about it a little bit, or what?
Yeah, I've thought about it, and I just know it's such a difficult race to win, and we just worked so hard over the years to try to bring the right horse in here. I'd have two of them with a big shot. Like I said, it's a dream come true. A very fortunate position I'm in.
Do you look at the field at all, or do you just lead your two horses over there knowing that you've got two big ones?
Yeah, we look at the field in terms of pace and trip, but outside of that, I just concerned with only my horses, and I wouldn't trade my two for anybody.
Right, absolutely. All right, Chad, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know it's a busy morning. Good luck on Saturday. Thanks. Welcome back. Saturdays at the Spa. Brian Nadeau with you on Travers Day. Really appreciate Chad Brown taking a few minutes to talk with us yesterday. I know how busy it is over there at his barn and all around when you're running a card like this and you're involved throughout. And Chad's got Good Magic, and as I mentioned, Gronkowski, the two favorites today in the Midsummer Derby. It's going to bring us to our first break on Saturdays at the Spa. When we come back, I've got Mike McCarthy with me. City of Light is going to take a lot of beating in the Forego. Stay tuned.
Sign up today for Capital OTB's handicapping series and plan your trip to Las Vegas.
The backstretch workers are the heart and soul of what we do.
They're the backbone of the industry.
People on the racetrack are very giving people.
It's a very oppressive community of people helping one another. We see it all the time.
Any help we need it. It's right there in their hands.
It makes so much easier in the family to have somebody like Nathan to help them.
For 4 generations, Bruce Cerrone and his family have continued the 96-year tradition of delighting their local following and faithful summer crowd with the finest authentic Italian recipes. Classic Italian dishes made with the freshest ingredients and served in a home-like setting where everyone is welcome. Some things have changed in the last 96 years, but not Pinnell's commitment to the finest in Italian cuisine. Pinnell's Italian Restaurant, a Saratoga tradition since 1922. 284 Jefferson Street, just minutes from the track.
Now it's a global series. The best racers from all over the world, the best trainers, the best jockeys.
You can get a free entry into the Breeders' Cup, and everybody wants to run in a Breeders' Cup race.
You get your travel expenses paid for the Breeders' Cup.
Automatic berth takes a lot of pressure off.
If we're considering two different races and one was a win and you're in and one was not, that would be the tiebreaker.
It's probably the best thing that's happened to racing in the last 10 years.
Breeders' Cup Challenge, win, and you're in.
Welcome back to Saturdays at the Spa. I feel like I'm at Shea Stadium or Citi Field here with the helicopters flying by. But Brian Nadeau with you. We again want to thank Chad Brown for joining us yesterday. talking a little Travers, and now I'm really happy to bring in and be joined by Mike McCarthy. Mike, I appreciate you stopping by Saturdays at the Spa. Mike's going to bring in City of Light, and if you're not familiar, I know Mike's based on the West Coast, and City of Light has predominantly been on the West Coast all year, but I mentioned it earlier, City of Light, for my money, and no disrespect to Mind Your Biscuits, who's been phenomenal as a New York bred. City of Light is, to me, the most impressive one-turn horse in the country, but I kind of use that loosely because he's a lot more than the one-turn horse, a lot of versatility as you bring in a pretty heavy favorite, Mike, for the Forego.
Yeah, we're certainly excited to be here. A race like this, with a hefty reputation, coming from California, shipping in here to Saratoga, so basically across the country to come and run in Saratoga's biggest day and one of racing's biggest days is a real honor for us.
And a little bit of a homecoming of you of sorts. We talked off the air. This is, and I give credit to Dave Grenning who pulled this one out, Deli Racing Form. 16 years to the day when you started with Todd Pletcher. So you're back in Saratoga. You started with Todd in 2002. You worked with Quality Road, City of Light sire. Talk a little bit about your time with Todd and how he prepared you for days like this in one of the absolute, the top-notch outfit, in the country for shipping horses and that, being a presence across the country.
Yeah, certainly. He set the foundation for what we're doing today. Everything that we kind of do sort of runs through that model. I couldn't think of a better place to get an education. It was a very important time in my life. The relationships I made, not only on the racetrack but off the racetrack, have suited me to this day. And to be able to come back here stable with him, as you guys just mentioned, 16 years to the day. I'm as nervous today as I was 16 years ago.
Todd's a disciple of Wayne Lukas, and when you think of Wayne, and then certainly of Todd, it's the shed row with no stone unturned. It's the flowers, and every T is crossed and I is dotted. As a trainer, what is there any one thing you took from Todd that you think has helped you more than anything?
I took a few things from him. Organization would be one, would be number one. Number two would be dedication, and they can easily be flip-flop. And try your best every day. I think Todd is, I've said this before, he's the gold standard in showing up every day, leaving it all out there. So if we can capture a little bit of that every day, we're in good shape.
Right. You went out on your own in 2014. Is it safe to say the horse you're going to lead over today, City of Light, is the best one you've had?
Yeah, that's hands down. We started in 2014 with one horse. We built it up to close to 40 today. Obviously, being on the West Coast, a little harder to attract the numbers than it would be back here in a heavily horse populated part of the game. But for sure, without doubt, he is the best horse.
And you've got this horse for the Warrens, who are predominantly, I know them at least, having a lot of horses on the East Coast. They've had horses with Todd, with Kieran, I know Chad as well. How did it come about that this one was sent your way out in California?
I actually just got a kind of a phone call from him one day. He had mentioned he was interested in having a horse back on the West Coast. They summer out there in La Jolla, California. Of course, the Warrens campaign St. Liam to a horse of the year campaign. So to be able to come here with a horse like that, a horse of this magnitude, for them to take them, center stage is very fulfilling.
We've got a couple videos of City of Light. He won the Malibu, and that really put him on the scene, beating straight 3-year-olds. But we're going to show the Triple Bend, where I think maybe he really announced his presence. I mean, he was 7-1 in the Malibu, so it wasn't certainly a shocker. But it's kind of in racing. It's what have you done for me lately, or prove it. And I think as we look at the Triple Bend here, certainly he did that. Now stepping up and beating older horses too.
Yeah. In the Triple Bend, he showed a little bit of a different dimension. Drawn down inside the day of the Malibu, we had to go right from the gate. He was able to go ahead and lay off of a horse, lay off of Bobby Abu Dhabi here that day, and was a hard-fought victory to the wire. Of course, we had to kind of reroute a little bit. Our original plan was to go to the Southwest. Inclement weather kept us home. We had to wait another 3 weeks, and it's not easy to keep a horse at the top of his game for an extra few weeks, especially when you're trying to get him to peak at the right time. But as you can see here, the way he galloped out that day, very impressive, and couldn't have been happier with him.
And then that got you, I was talking to you off the air, I was fortunate enough to be at Oaklawn Park when you shipped him there to the Oaklawn Handicap, trying 2 turns for the first time. I'm sure it was, you always think your horse can handle it, but I'm sure maybe a little trepidation. And then, oh, by the way, you meet Accelerate, who I think now it's clear that he's the best older handicap horse in the country after sweeping the 3 big races in California. We're going to show the Oaklawn Handicap. He settled even more that day than normal. And I remember looking over at my friend in the grandstand. I said, wow, this is one hell of a horse right here.
Yeah, this was fantastic. He broke okay that day, drawn out in the 11 hole, up to Drayden to go ahead and make himself a trip here. Horse put him exactly where he needed to be. Was probably a little touch wider than we would have liked to have been in the first turn. Relaxed nicely up the backside. When Drayden called on him coming to the 3/8 pole, he took his cue. And when he leveled off, it was exceptional here.
Yeah. You went on to the Gold Cup at the old Hollywood Gold Cup. Now at Santa Anita, of course, 1.25 miles. I thought on the far turn you kind of looked 2 to 5, and then is it just as easy to say didn't handle the trip or what? I mean, 1.25 miles. Obviously, you're kind of supposed to go to that race after you win it 9 furlongs. And is a Breeders' Cup Classic in play? Is it just the knee-jerk reaction he didn't handle it, or was there anything more there?
I was so convinced that he'd get 1.25 miles. He relaxed so nicely that day at Oaklawn Park. His training after that was as it had always been.
Yeah.
He's a very, trains phenomenally all the time. So I just thought to myself, you know what? If I can go ahead and attack this now and try and see if he can get 1.25 miles, this makes my summer a lot easier. I thought he ran a very respectable third that day. Got to the leaders very easily at the 3/8 pole. Kind of put in a little run from the 3/8 pole to the quarter pole and leveled out through the lane. I thought the track might have been a little bit different. Been playing a little bit differently that day. It seemed like it was a little deeper here earlier in the spring, but. Can he get 1.25 miles? I'm sure he probably can.
Okay.
We'll worry about that down the road sometime.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you that in a second. But first, the Whitney was on the radar, and then you were forced to miss it a little bit with kind of a nagging foot issue. And it's going to bring me to my next question. I always look at these. You're based in California, and we as East Coast guys and handicappers and fans, this horse, I'm looking at his page now, is just working off the page. And I want you to talk A, about his works, but B, about the mindset in California in the morning. Is it a lot? I know Todd works his horses fast. It's a lot different over here than it is over there when going 58 and change is maybe not that big of a deal. Your horse certainly looks like he's working up a storm.
He's a phenomenal workhorse, always has been. He actually worked 58 and change before he ever ran. I certainly wasn't expecting it. He likes to go ahead and showcase his ability from time to time in the morning. California is a little bit different in the regard that we run from flag fall to that's all, as they say. So he has been sort of trained like that.
Right.
And I think you'll see more of that today. Although, having said that, he's a horse that can go ahead and prompt the pace.
Yeah.
He's also kind enough to go ahead and sit right off of it. Wonderfully drawn out in the 8 hole today, so I think that gives IRAD a lot of options.
The draw has to be perfect for you. I mean, as you mentioned, it's an outside attack post. I'm sure you've looked at this race. Just as from a handicapping perspective, when I looked at it, I just felt it was odd that a 7 furlong grade 1 at Saratoga, there really is not a lot of speed.
There's not a lot of speed. Not a lot of speed. That being said, everybody shows up in the paddock and 6 guys will say the same thing. Hey, there's not a lot of speed in here. If nobody wants to go, you go. What ends up happening? 3 guys decide to go. Now you've got a 3-horse spread across the front, and it sets it up for someone to get hit by the deck. So, as I said, I've got the leading rider. I couldn't be happier to have him.
Do you give him any instructions? Or, I mean, like you said, he has not ridden this horse in the past. Is there, as a trainer, getting a guy that's really never been on your horse, is there a tutorial there? Or you give him, listen, Irad, he's a little funky or a little quirky?
I'll give him a couple of little suggestions. He's at the top of his game for a reason. Irad is. We have a relationship from when I worked for Todd. I have the utmost respect for him, for his agent, and for his brother. I think what they have done collectively is fantastic. So yeah, we'll give them a couple of pointers, and we're responsible for the effort, not the outcome.
Right.
So,
you mentioned that at the end of the day, you think you can get a mile and a quarter, but you said that's for down the road. But this race, it's a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. But being that it's at Churchill Downs, it's a one-turn mile, as you know, and there's a big difference between a one-turn mile and a mile and a quarter at Churchill Downs. Does this race actually do anything to determine that path? Because obviously, I would think you're going to run again somewhere, be it the Awesome Again or wherever it is. Do you get anything out of this race that says to you, okay, now I'm going here?
You know, we'll see what happens today. This horse runs awfully well fresh. Churchill Downs, I think, is going to be a racetrack to his liking. It's a much tighter surface. I think we got that day at Oaklawn Park, and you saw what he did there. So today will be a little bit of a guiding light for us. If we need to come back in the Awesome Again, we may do so. If we have to train up to one of the Breeders' Cup races, we're very comfortable doing that as well.
And I think in this day and age, that's almost the rule as opposed to the exception now. Timing, spacing, getting your best, like you bring a fresh horse in here today that, again, as I mentioned and you kind of alluded to, training lights out, save your best for the big ones.
Yeah. You know, I think there's so much information out there. You guys are privy to, obviously the form, all kinds of handicapping sheets, Bragas and Thorograph, those type of things. People, I think, get almost mesmerized by what they say. But a lot of times you got to pay attention to your horse from where I'm coming from. So I've listened to him. Hopefully he's listened to us, and we put it all together today.
16 years later, you're back at Saratoga with, one of the stars of the undercard. You ever kind of look back and like the circuitous route you took here and where you are today?
I have. It's was a wonderful time in my life. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I really appreciate you taking the time. Like I said, I know it's a busy day today. Mike McCarthy, thanks so much for stopping by. City of Light in the Forego, and quite frankly, might be the heaviest favorite of the day. He looks it on paper. He's an exciting horse. As I mentioned, if you're not familiar with him, he is based on the West Coast. Mike's going to bring over a horse today that is firmly one of the top horses in the country. So check him out on the Travers undercard in the Grade 1 Forego, 7 furlongs. It's a win and you're in, as I mentioned, for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. All the thanks to Mike for stopping by. Again, it's going to bring us to our second break here on Saturdays at the Spa. We had Chad Brown earlier. We had Mike McCarthy just now. And then when I come back, Mark Cassie from yesterday talking a little Wonder Gadot as she tries to make history in the Travers. Stay tuned.
Sign up today for Capital OTB's handicapping series and plan your trip to Las Vegas.
The backstretch workers are the heart and soul of what we do.
They're the backbone of the industry.
People on the racetrack are very giving people.
It's a very oppressive community of people helping one another. We see it all the time.
Any help we need is right there in our hands.
It makes so much easier in the family to have somebody like Nathan to help them.
For 4 generations, Bruce Cerrone and his family have continued the 96-year tradition of delighting their local following and faithful summer crowd with the finest authentic Italian recipes. Classic Italian dishes made with the freshest ingredients and served in a home-like setting where everyone is welcome. Some things have changed in the last 96 years, but not Pinnell's commitment to the finest in Italian cuisine. Pinnell's Italian Restaurant, a Saratoga tradition since 1922. 284 Jefferson Street, just minutes from the track.
Now it's a global series. The best racers from all over the world, the best trainers, the best jockeys.
You can get a free entry into the Breeders' Cup, and everybody wants to run in a Breeders' Cup race.
You get your travel expenses paid for the Breeders' Cup.
Automatic berth takes a lot of pressure off.
If we're considering two different races and one was a win and you're in and one was not, that would be the tiebreaker.
It's probably the best thing that's happened to racing in the last 10 years.
Breeders' Cup Challenge, win, and you're in.
A day at the track isn't complete without a night at the Horseshoe. Great food, hot music, and cold drinks. So why go downtown when all the action's just across from the track? The Horseshoe Inn at the corner of Nelson and Gridley.
Welcome back to Saturdays at the Spa. Brian Nadeau with you. Travers Day here at Saratoga Racecourse, and it's just it's a glorious day. If you're on the fence about coming up, I really wish you would, because weather's been an issue all meet, but it certainly will not be today. Low 80s, the humidity is on the light side. It's going to be a full packed house. Get up here early, check it out. Again, I can't thank my guests enough. It's a tough time to try to get trainers with superstar horses to make the time on Travers Day, and a 9 to 10 in the morning. And thanks so much to Chad Brown yesterday for giving us a few minutes and talking a little Good Magic and Gronkowski, and then certainly Mike McCarthy for stopping by in from California. Mike told me off the air he's right out tomorrow morning, so it's kind of a surgical strike for Mike McCarthy here today with City of Light. And as I mentioned, Mike's based on the West Coast. City of Light's been on the West Coast. If you're not familiar with him, this is a superstar of a horse. So check him out. Check out his races. Thanks so much for Mike for stopping by. And my next guest, who I was fortunate enough to talk to yesterday at his barn, Mark Casse, is going to try to make some history today. He's going to bring Wonder Gadot over there, and she's going to look to become the first filly to win the Travers in over 100 years. It's a century since it's been last done, and this is a gal that could have been 2 to 5 to win the Canadian Triple Crown, as she won. She won the Queen's Plate, and I was fortunate enough to be live and in person to see that and see her decimate the Queen's Plate field. And then she won the Prince of Wales at Fort Erie, and like I said, she would have been about 2 to 5 to win the Breeders' the third leg of the Canadian Triple Crown. Only one other filly has done it, and they said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to try to make history. We're going to run in the Travers. She's a legitimate 8 to 1 in the Travers. She's got a puncher's chance. Mark Casse, we got him yesterday talking about Wonder Gadot in the Travers, and then quickly about Telekinesis also, who he's going to cut back in the King's Bishop. And Telekinesis was one of the second choice in the Queen's Plate, and Wonder Gadot blitzed him pretty good. As I mentioned, she's in with a chance today in the Travers. Let's hear what Mark had to say about her chances. Brian Nadeau with you live on location, Saturdays at the Spa. Happy to be joined by Mark Casse as we draw in on the Travers, and Mark's going to try to make a little history, a lot of history actually, as he brings in Wonder Gadot, trying to become the first filly in over 100 years to win the Travers. Pretty monumental occasion coming up, Mark.
Well, hopefully it works out that way. I mean, it's nice just to be able to participate, but you always want to run well.
Right. I guess the first question would be how she's training coming in out of the two races up in Canada.
She's amazing. She's that's why we call her Wonder Woman. It seems like she just thrives on competition and running. She's doing as well, if not better, than ever.
Right. No doubt you're taking the road less traveled. You could have easily run in the Alabama, another 1.25 mile race. You comfortably beat Midnight Bijou into Kentucky Oaks, and I would assume you would have been favored in that race. Talk a little bit about bypassing that race. I know you've talked, Gary Barber likes to go after history. You're certainly doing it in the Travers.
Yeah, I mean, we think we have a legitimate chance, and as much as the Alabama is a super race, winning the Travers would be unbelievable. We thought, our thoughts were, you win the Alabama, you know, it'd be wonderful, but if you win the Travers, the world will know.
Sure. Does the spacing help a little bit too? I know you get obviously you get an extra week after a pretty rigorous campaign so far.
There were a couple of factors too that we thought helped us. One was the extra week. The other one is 5 pounds. We're going to get 5 pounds going 1.25 miles. That's mean something. You've been through the rigors of the Triple Crown this year. You've had horses on the trail. You know this field inside and out. Do you look at it as a whole and say, I've got to beat this horse, this kind of thing, or are you just happy that you're bringing over a filly that's in with a legitimate chance? Honestly, I don't worry a whole lot about that. We have to beat Good Magic. I think you beat Good Magic, you probably get the job done. But I tend not to. I look at it. I've won so many races in my career that, you know, people say you couldn't win and whatever. So I know if you're not in it, you can't win it. And I think it's solid. I base a lot of my opinion on Flame Away. Like you said, I ran Flame Away in the Bluegrass, and he was second in the Bluegrass. He was second here in the Jim Dandy. Personally, and I may be wrong, but I think Wonder Godot's a better horse than Flame Away. So that's one of my bases for also being in the Travers.
We're going to bring up footage of the Kentucky Oaks, a heartbreaking defeat, but she ran huge that day against what we now know as the clear-cut divisional leader, Monomoy Girl. Just a huge effort, and she just kind of keeps on keeping on, basically. Talk a little bit about the Oaks. I think she was 16-1 that day, hadn't won a race this winter. Big performance on what was at that point the biggest race of her life.
I agree. I didn't know what to think. She trained really well into the Oaks, but I knew she had to step up her game because I'd been disappointed with some of her performances earlier. Now looking back, we've added blinkers, which has probably helped somewhat. And I also believe that it's the distance. The Oaks was a heartbreaker besides the Kentucky Derby. I mean, I would have to rate the Oaks right up there, with the Traverses, if you any of those kind of races. So it was a heartbreaker, but in the same time, I was proud of her and to see that she could run with a filly like Monomoy Girl, who is, as you say, the clear cut.
It's Wonder Godot, and on the inside, Monomoy Girl. It's down to these two, and it's going to be Monomoy Girl in the Kentucky Oaks over Wonder Godot, and then a photo between Midnight Bijou and Eskimo Kisses in a final time of 1 minute 49.13 seconds.
And then you headed up to Canada. You comfortably win the Queen's Plate. I was up there that day, and I remember they have a cool ceremony where they bring you upstairs in the press box. And somebody did ask you, they said, Mark, was it the blinkers? And you were pretty quick to say, well, it could have been, but the distance, you knew this was a filly crying out for 1.25 miles.
She just never stops. Mm-hmm. So the farther she goes, the more she likes it. She's kind of more of a galloper than a big turn of speed. So the farther you go, the closer you can be to the pace because it's not as hot.
Right.
Wonder Godot's in front, and she's dashed away in the Queen's Plate, ahead by a century into second. But there's no doubt who's the best today, and it's all about Wonder Godot, Wonder Woman herself, demolishes them in the Queen's Plate. What a brilliant win, ahead by a century second.
Then she wins the second leg, and I actually remember the other thing that I found interesting right after the Queen's Plate. They asked you said, what do you do here? Do you go on? And you said, we'll go on. But then you meant the Alabama was, one of the first words out of your mouth. Now looking back on it, you could have went for the Canadian Triple Crown. Only one other filly has done it, but you and I'm assuming Gary, Gary was up there as well. Never really dawned on you. Was it decision you had to make? I mean, to bypass a lot of history, Canadian history?
Well, a couple things. I think when I said the Alabama, I think Justify may have still been around in the picture.
Sure.
So, you know, if Justify was still here, would we have been running the Traverse instead of the Alabama? Probably not.
Sure.
You know, so Justify's injury and him being retired had something to do with it. As far as the third leg of the Triple Crown for Canada, it just didn't make sense to us.
A mile and a half on the turf, right? Yeah.
Mile and a half on the turf. We think turf is our least preferred surface. And then where do you go from a mile and a half on the turf? So it was always kind of, I wasn't sure I was going to do it. I'm hoping every Canadian that I disappointed, and by not going for the third leg of Triple Crown, I can make amends on Saturday in the Traverse.
Is there, again, you've looked at this field, you've looked at it on paper, I'm sure. Is there a trip you have in mind about how this, not a lot of speed in the race, at least when I looked at it, you know, it seems like it could be a little light on speed. You have a position, a trip in mind in the perfect world?
Well, going in, somebody asked me what, you know, about my post position. I said, well, it would have been my 10th choice.
Okay.
The only one worse would have been 1. But we can take advantage of that post position. We're going to show speed. Hopefully we break well. I think the one, can't think of the name of him right now, but he's probably... Trigger warning. I could see him maybe being on the lead. I don't think Good Magic's going to get far away either. He's going to be up close, and the perfect trip would be sitting right behind those guys.
Okay.
Just not letting them get too far away.
Right. You kind of joked a little bit before we started that you still do get nervous on these big race days. It's, you know, and I said, well, all the heavy lifting is done. You've just got to lead her over now. You've got to be excited that you're taking part. And like I said, you're a legitimate, you know, whatever the odds may be, 4, 5, 6 to 1 in the Traverse with a filly that's done nothing wrong all year.
I'm proud of her. You know, win, lose, or draw. As a horse trainer, the only thing you can hope for is to get to the race in one piece, be happy. She's training really well, and then just have a good trip.
Yeah.
And then it is what it is. If she isn't good enough, then I can accept that. I just want her to have a good trip.
Right. You lose John Velasquez, but you get Irad Ortiz. You know, certainly 2 great riders, one in the Hall of Fame, one that will be in the Hall of Fame, I would think, one day. Hasn't ridden her before. Is there any? I think he did get on her though. Is there any nuances? Is she that kind of filly, or?
No, I mean we obviously would have loved to have Johnny, but we understood. We knew going in that was not going to happen.
Right.
We got lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you could ask for a better replacement, and he'll suit her really well. I just love his attitude. He's an aggressive rider. She needs an aggressive rider, and we're just, like I said, we're going to try to be fairly close early.
Yeah. Quickly before I let you go, Telekinesis cuts back in the King's Bishop. He was one of the ones in the Queen's Plate. Probably couldn't see out the 1.25 miles. Kind of interesting on the cutback to 1 turn.
Telekinesis is an extremely talented horse. I thought last year as a 2-year-old he was the best 2-year-old we had. He's had a few things kind of not go his way, and of course we tried to go to the Queen's Plate. Probably looking back, I don't think he cares much for the Tapete. I kind of saw that when he won the plate trial. If he can handle the kickback, because he's going to get kickback like he's never seen before, if he can stay close, he's going to run really well. He's training extremely well.
Great. Well, happy to be joined by Mark Casse today. All the best with Wonder Gadot in the Traverse.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Okay. All right. Thanks so much. Welcome back. Brian Nadeau here. Saturdays at the Spa. Special thanks to Mark Casse for taking the time to talk a little Wonder Gadot with us, as he and Gary Barber try to make history. Become first filly to win the Traverse in over 100 years. And as I mentioned, I talked about it on the Handicappers Report with Anthony Mormino, and talked about it briefly here. She's in with a chance. I picked her 4th. She's an A to me if you're playing horizontal exotics, and I think she's a major player in here in a Traverse that, again, we had Chad Brown on earlier, and Chad's got the 2 favorites, Good Magic and Gronkowski, but with all due respect to either of those horses, neither has to win, and I think Wonder Gadot is one of the ones in there on maybe the next tier that can step up. She's a true 1.25 mile distance horse, and I don't think Mark and Gary, by any stretch of the imagination, are biting off more than they can chew in here. So it's going to be a really fun race around 5:45. But before we get to that, we're going to come back from our second break and talk a little sword dancer. We've got Tom Albatrani ready to come on, and he's definitely got one of the ones in the sword dancer as Sadler's Joy looks to repeat. So we're going to bring Tom on in a second here after our break. But as I send it to break, first and foremost, I want to thank our great sponsors, Jacob and Anthony's over at 38 High Rock Avenue. Great fine dining, a great happy hour, a lot of fun over there. Just outside of a town. They've been great to us. All meet there. You see it there. Accommodate big parties. You can eat at the bar. I've been known to do that a time or two again. So 38 High Rock, Jacob and Anthony's. We really thank them throughout the meet here, sponsoring Saturdays at the Spa. But like I mentioned, that's going to bring us to our second break here, our third break actually. And when we come back, Tom Albatrani's here to talk a little Sadler's Joy, who's going to make his late run once again in the sword dancer. Stay tuned.
For 4 generations, Bruce Cerrone and his family have continued the 96-year tradition of delighting their local following and faithful summer crowd with the finest authentic Italian recipes. Classic Italian dishes made with the freshest ingredients and served in a home-like setting where everyone is welcome. Some things have changed in the last 96 years, but not Pinnell's commitment to the finest in Italian cuisine. Pinnell's Italian Restaurant, a Saratoga tradition since 1922. 284 Jefferson Street, just minutes from the track.
The backstretch workers are the heart and soul of what we do.
They're the backbone of the industry.
People on the racetrack are very giving people.
It's a very oppressive community of people helping one another. We see it all the time.
Any help we need it. It's right there in their hands.
It makes so much easier in the family to have somebody like Nathan to help them.
If you like to play the Late Pick 5, here's some great news. Capital OTB is now accepting internet wagering on NYRA's Late Pick 5 at Saratoga on all platforms and all digital devices. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com, look for the icon, and there you go. If you're playing on one of your digital devices, just open your Capital OTB Bet icon, click on the menu button, and scroll down to find the Late Pick 5. Late Pick 5 wagering, now at Capital OTB.
Welcome back. Brian Nadeau with you Saturdays at the Spa. Again, we were happy to be joined by Chad Brown and then Mike McCarthy right here and Mark Cassie as well. And I'm going to bring in my next guest who's sitting right here. Tom Albatrani joins me on Saturdays at the Spa on Travers Day. And not in the Travers, but Sadler's Joy once again in the sword dancer, looking to repeat and do his thing again.
Yeah, he's been training really well coming into this race, and we're looking forward to seeing him run this afternoon.
You know, we talked Travers earlier, and obviously Justifies not here, and he ran 6 times, and he's gone, and it's part of the game, and we all get it and understand it. But you look at Sadler's Joy, and you look at his form on paper, and he's now 5, and he's run 19 times, and you know, he brings it every time. I mentioned earlier talking about Bravazzo, like the old Wayne Lucas kind of throwback horse. That dances every dance, and your guy here, start number 20 of his career, going for a sword dancer repeat. Talk a little bit about not only his consistency and his longevity, but the ability to show up every time at the grade 1 level too. We're not talking about, you know, minor stakes races here, at the grade 1 level every time, delivering his run.
He's been really amazing. He brings his A game every time. You know, we're talking about half a length neck head in every start he makes. I think he's one of the most consistent turf horses we have in these route races. And again, today, you know, if we get a good trip and he comes with that same run as he always has, I think he'll be right there.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with Sadler's Joy, he's a kind of horse where they start the race, you can maybe go get a soda or a beer and then come back, because when they hit the far turn, he's still going to be last. But yet every single time, even regardless of pace, there he is down the lane. Is that just always been him, Tom? A lack of speed early and late run?
It just seems that's his style. I don't think there's a way you could let him be closer, because I think he's just going to run his own race. He knows where he likes to be. He's always out the back at the end. And, I mean, we don't ever seem to get a good pace in these races.
Yeah.
So whether or not there's a legitimate good pace up front to help him, you know, that remains to be seen. So, you know, we'll see. If Glorious Empire, fantastic, make a good pace, throw High Happy in the mix. So, you know, we may get a good pace, but I'm not going to worry about that too much. I think if he just comes with that late move, I think he's going to be very, very tough.
We're going to bring up footage of last year when he upset the Sword Dancer at 7-1, and again doing his thing from the back of the pack. He was last entering the far turn in a field of 7 and mowed them all down. Here he comes here. He's the 3 last right now, and just kind of doing his thing.
Yeah, that's where he wants to be, and he's just got that tremendous kick. You would never know he's going to get up in any of his races where he's at the 8th hole, but he just comes with those huge strides late at the end, and he runs them down. It's all about timing, you know, to get him up there. So hopefully we can have the same kind of scenario today.
You mentioned pace, and to his credit, though, he seems to just run around it anyway, regardless of how fast they're going. But, you know, for a 1.5 mile race on the turf with a field of 10, you alluded to it. There could be some hitting in here. Glorious Empire just wired last time in the Bowling Green and in the dead heat. Fantastic, won the United Nations on the lead. And High Happy doesn't ever give anything away, and he's drawn outside those two. So I would think going into today's Sword Dancer, in turf racing of late in 3-5 years, it seems there's never any pace.
Right.
It looks, at least today, like it could be honest.
It might be honest, but for him, you know, we're going another 1/8 of a mile longer this time around, and truly the turf course was on the soft side, which I don't think he really appreciated as much as he would be on firm ground. And Javier even made a comment. He said, just, you know, we lost ground on the turn just because he wasn't getting good footing over, and then once he straightened out, he finished faster than any other horse in the race. So now we're going an extra 1/8 of a mile. I think that gives us a little more time to catch up.
You mentioned it earlier, the timing the run. When you've got a horse like this with a late burst, is it something where, you know, wait, and then wait a little more? It's got to be tricky to time that run with a horse that does have such a burst, because if you start a little earlier, I'm sure it takes a little starch out of it late.
Yeah, we may have seen that maybe last year in the Bowling Green, but I think with him, you don't want to be too far back. You can't give him too much to make up, because you can only make up so much ground. So as long as he's within striking distance at the quarter pole, I think he can put them away.
We're going to bring up footage of the Bowling Green. You know, they ran 1-2 in the dead heat. As you mentioned, he came up just a little short, but, you know, he's got 3 wins at 1.5 miles. We're going to show it here, the soft ground. You mentioned the soft ground, a lack of pace, but here he comes again with his late run, just a little short. All things being equal today, on firmer ground with a little stretch and distance. Does it play more to you maybe than some of the others?
I think today it's definitely play a little bit better into our hands, especially being it's a little bit firmer. So I definitely think it'll make a difference.
I mean, and I'm no horseman by any stretch of the imagination, but he looked like he was maybe laboring a little bit or struggling over that ground.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it before in his other races, even last year, going into like the Joe Hirsch last year. And we know he's capable of doing it on softer ground, but firm ground is definitely what he wants.
And I just looked, even seeing the video there, he galloped out best in that race. And, you know, as I mentioned, he's got 3 wins at 1.5 miles. It can be a tricky distance. It can be a testing distance to a lot of these horses. And, spring quality, fantastic. They're all high quality horses, but they're yet to prove it at a 1.5 miles. Do you, as a trainer, do you look at this race? Do you handicap the race? Do you see who you have to beat, or do you just kind of know what you're leading over there and know he's going to run for you?
I think I know what we're leading over there. I mean, it's the same horses, pretty much. A couple of newcomers, but I think also in his last couple of races, weight also got to him. He was carrying 6 to 8 pounds higher than the winners of the last couple of races. So we're almost closer on even weights today. So that will also be a factor.
Right. Julien Leparoux rode this horse great over, but you did make the switch to Javier a couple back. As Javier maybe been able to get him a little closer, or was there anything there, or just maybe?
Yeah, I mean, Julien got along well with the horse. When we liked Julien, we just felt that maybe we just needed to make a change just to see Javier was maybe a little more aggressive with the horse. So, if that could make a little tweak here and there, we just thought it might be worth trying to change.
A couple maintenance breezes, it looks like, coming in. He's not a flashy workhorse.
Not a flashy workhorse. He doesn't need to do much, but he loves Saratoga, and he's coming into the race. He looks fantastic.
Looking at his form, you basically took the same exact schedule as you did last year, all part of the plan. I mean, the Sword Dancer's $1 million turf race. It's a win and you're in to the Breeders' Cup. Have you been basically working backwards this year? And
it's pretty much the same plan as last year. It's the basic races that lead up to the Breeders' Cup. So we didn't want to do anything really different. The only other race possible would have been the UN, but I think time-wise, this set up more perfectly for us going into the Breeders' Cup.
If you allow yourself to look forward a little bit, you mentioned, we've talked Breeders' Cup. It is a win and you're in for the Breeders' Cup. You went out to Del Mar last year, very credible fourth. I can't imagine California turf is the greatest thing for this horse. The Breeders' Cup at Churchill Downs in the fall, a more conducive turf course maybe to a New York kind of horse.
It might be. I think with California, you're almost guaranteed firm ground. Where going to Kentucky, you don't know what type of weather we may be having that weekend. But this horse, I think he runs well on any track he's been. Gulfstream, Belmont, Saratoga. I don't think there's any excuse for him on which turf course or racetrack would be better suited by him.
We're essentially back here a year from the day. We could have had you on this program last year talking exactly the same. Any difference in the horse? He's a year older, but again, as I mentioned, you just look at him on paper, he just seems like he's the exact same horse.
He's the same horse. He's so consistent, and I mean, I actually think he's maybe a little stronger this year than he was last year. So he's really sharp and he's doing well. So looking forward to this afternoon.
Post position, you're outside, but you're probably going to drop back anyway. Is it a negative? Do you worry about it?
No, I think he's just going to break and fall back and try to save some ground on the first couple of turns, and then hopefully we get out late.
Well, we've talked off the air how it's been a really strong meet for you. I would think you're quite happy with the results, and a win in the Sword Dancer, if you're fortunate enough to do it, would be pretty cherry on top.
Repeat win from last year will be even sweeter. So we're just looking forward to it.
Yeah, Tom, I really want to thank you. We've got a $100 gift certificate for you for Jacob and Anthony's.
Thank you very much.
Over on 38 High Rock. Once again, we're really happy that they've been with us all year at Saturdays at the Spa. Good luck today in the Sword Dancer. I know it's a busy day. I really appreciate you taking the time on what is Travers Day. Can be hectic, can be busy. So thank you so much, and best of luck to
Thank you very much. Thanks,
Tom Albertrani, folks. He's got Sadler's Joy, I believe the morning line favorite, in the Sword Dancer. He's looking to repeat, again, a Breeders' Cup turf bid on the line. As I mentioned, one of the hard knockers in the division, just a gem of consistency. Best of luck to him today. A cool horse that, the kind you root for, because you see him at the back and you watch his races and you see the videos and you know he won, but you kind of watch it like, did he really get there? And more often than not, he does. So best of luck to him. And that's a wrap on Travers Day. It's a monster day. So if you're still thinking about coming up, I really hope you do. And again, I can't thank my guests enough. Certainly Mike McCarthy, who was here at 9:15, and Tom Albertrani. I know and understand how busy it can be on this day, especially when we're here an hour early. So I can't thank them enough for stopping by. And then certainly Chad Brown, and Mark Casse yesterday for making the time and taking the time on Travers Eve with their 3 heavy hitters, Good Magic, Gronkowski, and Wonder Gadot. So as I mentioned, load up that Capital OTB bet account today. We've got 6 grade ones, 4 Breeders' Cup winning your in races, 7 stakes in the Travers around 545. A really, really good field of 10 and a lot of different ways you can go. So like I said, that's a wrap. Saturdays at the Spa, Travers edition. Brian Naddle, thanks so much for joining you. Best of luck today at Saratoga.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off Track Betting.